Chapter 1. Silence After Loss. Days passed one after another, but for Daniel, they felt like an endless gray void. Every morning began and ended with a silence that could not be filled. His apartment, once full of warmth and laughter, now seemed foreign and empty. He wandered through the rooms like a shadow of himself, touching Emily's things, cups, books, her scarf left draped over a chair. Everything carried the scent of her presence, but instead of bringing comfort, it only intensified the sense of loss. Daniel realized he had been living in a state of numbness for weeks. He felt as if on autopilot, going to work, returning home, sometimes watching TV, not out of interest, but simply to fill the silence. Food had lost its taste, sleep its peace, and the hours between sunset and sunrise stretched into infinity. His friends and colleagues tried to support him, but he pushed them away. Not because he didn't appreciate their care, but because no words could bring Emily back or mend the hole in his heart left by her death. He remembered the first time he met Emily. It was at an exhibition in a small gallery downtown. She stood by a painting, studying it intently, as if trying to feel something invisible to everyone else. Daniel, still young and naive, approached her and asked what he liked about the piece. Her eyes shone with such genuine curiosity that he felt as if the world around them ceased to exist. That was the beginning of their story, full of love, laughter, small everyday joys, but also moments of fear and doubt that often hide between the lines of daily life. Now, after her death, those memories were sharp like blades. He tried to avoid photographs, but sometimes stumbled upon them in a drawer or on a shelf. Each image, her smile, her gaze, her hand that once held his, brought back the sense of loss, along with a lingering doubt. Had he truly done everything to make her happy? Had he loved her enough while she was still here? One morning, as the sun began to peek through the drawn curtains, Daniel noticed an old cabinet in the corner of the bedroom. It had stood there neglected for a long time, cluttered with useless items and books he had never read. A sudden, irresistible urge to look inside overcame him. Perhaps it was coincidence, or perhaps an inner call of the heart, a search for something Emily had left behind. Opening the door, he noticed an envelope lying atop a pile of old papers. He immediately recognized her handwriting, neat, flowing, slightly slanted to the right. Daniel felt his heart skip a beat. His hand trembled as he took the envelope, feeling a faint hope he hadn't felt in a long time. The letter was not large, but it was heavy, perhaps not physically, but emotionally. He sat on the edge of the bed and carefully opened it. The words on the paper seemed alive, as if Emily herself were whispering in his ear, telling him what she had never spoken out loud. Her love, her doubts, fears, dreams, all of it was there on that small sheet. Daniel couldn't look away. Each line opened a new world to him, a world that he hadn't noticed before, existing simultaneously beside him and inside her. He felt his heart tighten, his eyes fill with tears, not only because of loss, but because she had left him a key to understanding himself, their life together, and perhaps even the future. The silence that once seemed empty and hopeless now took on new meaning. It became a space for memories, reflection, and encountering emotions he had long suppressed. Daniel felt that this was only the beginning of something greater than simply grieving. It was like a door to another dimension he had never dared to open before. He read the letter several times, discovering something new with each pass. Her words were tender, yet direct. They forced him to face the truth, and while some moments caused pain, others gave him strength. The letter hinted at a person from her past who might change their fate. Daniel didn't understand who it was, but he sensed that this mystery could be the key to his healing. The days after that morning were filled with mixed emotions. He wandered through the city, trying to find meaning in each step. People around him seemed so alive, while he felt like a shadow. Yet the letter was there, like an invisible compass pointing the way. He began to notice small details: the scent of fresh coffee at the morning cafe, children's laughter in the park, the gentle wind rustling the leaves. All of it felt more significant than before. In the evenings, he reopened the letter and read it again. And though the pain of loss had not disappeared, he felt he was beginning to understand her intentions. Emily had not left him merely words, she had left a key to a new life. Daniel realized that his task now was not only to remember, but to move forward, carrying love and memories while not letting grief stop him. Thus, the silence after loss began to change. It was no longer empty. It had become a place to meet himself, his memories, and the truth. And while Daniel did not know what he would do next, he felt the first breath of hope, quiet but certain, guiding him forward.
Chapter 2. Secrets on Paper. Daniel spent his evenings sitting at the table in his room, where the dim light of the lamp reflected off the paper he held in his hands. Emily's letter lay before him, and he couldn't look away. Every word, every stroke of her handwriting made his heart beat faster, while simultaneously chilling him. The cold realization that these words were now forever for him, and she could no longer speak them with her own voice. She began the letter with simple, almost everyday things. Memories of the first days of their meeting, the laughter they shared, the little things that made their everyday life special. But gradually the words grew deeper, more poignant. She wrote about the love she felt for him while confessing her doubts at the same time. Doubts about herself, about life, about the future they had planned together. Daniel read and felt his soul fill with both warmth and pain simultaneously. "I want you to know." These words repeated several times throughout the letter, and Daniel sensed that each "I want you to know" contained an entire story he had never known before. She wrote about her fears, the fear of being alone, the fear of losing his love, the fear that she hadn't done everything to make their life happy. But yet, she admitted that these fears did not lessen her feelings for him. On the contrary, they made her love deeper, more sincere, and more fragile. Next came the words that made Daniel hold his breath. Emily hinted at a person from her past, someone he knew almost nothing about. He lifted his eyes from the letter, but all that was before him was an empty room, an empty apartment, an empty life. Who could it be? Why had she left this hint for him specifically? And why now, after she was gone, did this single word evoke such strong curiosity and fear at the same time? He read that paragraph several times. Each sentence felt like a small puzzle to be solved, yet the solution seemed both close and unreachable. Daniel felt that she had left this clue not to shock him, but to give him a chance to understand, to feel, to reflect. This was not a letter of guilt or betrayal. It was a letter of guidance, a letter of hope, a letter of suggestion. He remembered how Emily once spoke of the past as something unchangeable but understandable. At the time, he hadn't listened closely, caught up in the present, their life, their plans. Now, after her death, those words took on new meaning. They sounded like a quiet voice from the past, urging Daniel to look deeper, not only into her life, but into his own. Daniel began recalling moments that had once seemed trivial. Emily's glance at an old friend's photo, her quiet smiles when speaking of people he had never met, her phone calls to which he had never paid much attention. All of it now seemed part of a larger picture, part of a story he was only beginning to unravel. He felt the letter carried a dual message, one for the heart, the other for the mind. The heart was to remember love, to recall loss, to feel both pain and warmth simultaneously. The mind was to start seeking answers, to search for the person from Emily's past, to search for meaning in all that had happened, and perhaps to find a new path for himself. The days became like shadows from the past, but they were now more than mere memories. Every detail he restored in his mind mattered, revealing another layer of their shared life. Daniel began keeping a small journal, writing down everything he remembered, everything he felt, and even his guesses about who the mysterious person might be. It felt as if Emily was now watching him, holding his hand through the words on paper. He often paused in the middle of the night, reading certain paragraphs aloud. "I want you to understand." And he tried to understand, to feel the depth of her emotions. Pain and love, fear and hope, all merged into one, and Daniel felt it changing him. He was no longer merely grieving. He began to reflect, to think, to search. Then he realized that the letter had become a mirror for him. Through Emily's words, he saw himself, all his mistakes, everything he had missed, every moment he could have been a better man, and at the same time, every moment he had loved sincerely, but not fully understood. The letter revealed not only her, but himself, who he was and who he could become. Each day Daniel spent in contemplation, sifting through images of the past, now like pieces of a puzzle slowly coming together. He began noticing details he had previously overlooked, the color of her eyes in a certain light, the sound of her laughter, small habits that made her alive, real, now inaccessible, yet so close through the words on paper. Gradually, a new rhythm of life emerged. He began waking earlier to write down thoughts, analyze words, examine memories from a fresh perspective. Daniel felt that the letter was not merely a remembrance of Emily, but a guide to understanding himself and the world he had once ignored. But what affected him most was the hint about the person from her past. He didn't know who it was, yet he felt that this mystery held the key to the next step. Although fear mingled with the desire to know the truth, Daniel felt ready to search. The letter had given him not only memories, but also purpose. Evenings became times of discovery. He sat reading each word, each line, attempting to unpack emotions and facts like a puzzle. Doubt and love, fear and hope, all intertwined, yet revealing a path toward understanding. And every time he finished reading, Daniel felt a lightness, the lightness of knowing he was no longer alone in this world without her, that Emily's words had left him a compass. He knew the next step was to find that person from her past, but first he had to understand that the letter was not a punishment or a secret concealing malice. It was a gift, the last expression of love, teaching him to accept life in all its complexity. And although he could not yet imagine how the search would unfold, Daniel felt ready to take the first step. The silence of his apartment was no longer empty. It was filled with words, memories, sorrow, and hope all at once. The letter had become a bridge between past and future, between losses and possibilities. And for the first time in weeks, Daniel felt that he could not only survive, but live.
Chapter 3. Memories Come Alive. Daniel sat in the armchair by the window, Emily's letter before him, watching the rain blur the contours of the city. The drops tapped against the glass like a quiet drum, marking the rhythm of his thoughts. He felt the past coming alive before his eyes, yet not as he had remembered. Now it seemed multidimensional. Each moment, every detail took on new meaning, and memories that once seemed simple revealed emotional depths he had overlooked when she was still new. He began recalling their first trips together. They had visited small towns, forgotten cafes, and old bookstores where Emily would browse the shelves for hours while Daniel waited, trying to hide his impatience. Now he understood that it wasn't the places themselves that mattered to her, but the moments they created there. discussing what they had read, exchanging thoughts, laughing at shared jokes. Every small detail was for her a sign of attention, love, and care, and he hadn't always noticed it at the time. He remembered evenings at home when they sat on the sofa and Emily read excerpts from her favorite novels to him. He listened, feeling the warmth of her voice, the scent of her hair. These memories now seemed brighter than any photograph because they were filled with emotions that could only be felt again through memory. Every detail, from the tremor of her hands when she was nervous to the quiet laugh that stirred his heart, took on new meaning. He also recalled arguments that once seemed trivial, but now appeared in a new light. He saw that each disagreement had its purpose. They were not arguing about small things, but about fears, hopes, and the desire to understand each other. Back then, he often withdrew, unwilling to confront conflict. Now he realized that it was through these moments that they had grown together, forming a shared story far deeper than he had recognized at the time. He sifted through the first days after their wedding, how Emily would sit in the kitchen making coffee while he watched silently, feeling happiness but not fully grasping how deeply that simplicity filled his heart. Now he understood. Happiness lay in the small things, and he hadn't always noticed it. Each memory stirred a wave of emotions, mixing joy and sorrow. Emily's letter became a catalyst for these feelings. The words on the paper opened the door to her inner world, her fears, dreams, hopes, and simultaneously to Daniel's own feelings, which he had often suppressed. He felt that he could now see her as she truly was, not only through the lens of his limited memory. One passage struck him particularly. She recalled an evening in an old park. They sat on a bench under a chestnut tree, and Emily spoke of her childhood dreams, the people she had once loved, and her fear of losing those close to her. Daniel remembered that evening outwardly, the cold air, the rustling leaves, the scent of rain. But the letter made him feel the emotions that he had not noticed at the time. He now understood that the evening had been important not only for her, but for him as well, for their connection, for realizing how complicated and yet beautiful it was to be together. Memories that had once seemed merely part of the past now held the power of lessons. Daniel saw where he had gone wrong, where he had failed to understand her needs, and where, on the contrary, he had been present in her most difficult moments. He began to feel gratitude not just for the big events, but for every small touch, smile, and word of support. Each memory was like a thread connecting his heart to Emily's, even after her death. He remembered moments of her laughter that once seemed simple, but now held depth. Her laughter could heal the worst days. It was music, reminding him of love and joy, of a life worth living. Daniel felt that through these memories, he was beginning to feel alive again, even through the pain of loss. He was particularly touched by the little things he had once ignored, her habit of leaving small notes on the table, her love for old films they watched together on weekends, her patience, and her ability to listen. Now all of this was not just memory, but a lesson she had left him. Every small detail, every moment, became part of what helped Daniel experience life after loss. He also began to understand the words about the mysterious person from her past. Hints appeared in memories, a subtle sadness in her eyes, mentions of old friends, moments when she had been thoughtful. Daniel realized that this person was not a threat, but part of her life he hadn't understood, and that now he could learn to accept these unknown fragments as part of the whole picture. With each passing day, the memories became clearer. He began to see their life in its entirety, joy and pain, fears and hopes. Emily's letter gave him the chance to experience it again, but with newfound awareness.
He began to understand that love was not only joy, but also acceptance, understanding, the willingness to let go and to cherish every moment. And it was through these memories that Daniel felt ready for the next step, to seek the truth, to accept reality, to explore new horizons. Emily's letter, her words, her memories became a bridge between past and future. He no longer merely grieved. He began to live, to analyze, to reflect, and perhaps, for the first time, to feel the inner strength that grief had once suppressed. Days passed, and the memories continued to come alive. He noticed that he had begun to see life in new colors, to feel its scents, tastes, movements, joys, and sorrows. He realized that every moment with Emily had been a gift, and that now he was ready to accept that gift and move forward, keeping her memory, love, and the wisdom she had left. The memories came alive not only in his mind, but in his heart. They became a guide, showing the way not to flee from pain, but to accept it, understand it, learn from it, and continue to love. And though he did not yet know what lay ahead, Daniel felt ready to move forward, preserving the memory, love, and experiences as his most precious treasure.
Chapter 4. Wrestling with the Shadow. The days grew heavier and the nights longer. Emily's letter was no longer just a letter. It had become a challenge for Daniel, who had previously lived in the shadow of his own grief. Now a new purpose stood before him, to find the person she had mentioned and understand why it was so important. He felt fear of the unknown, fear of confronting a truth he might not want to see. Yet alongside this fear came determination. He could not remain passive. The first steps proved difficult. Daniel realized he had little information, just a hint in the letter, a few names mentioned by Emily in her memories. He began with Emily's friends and colleagues, trying to inquire about her past without raising suspicion. Every conversation was like stepping carefully on fragile ice. He feared discovering something that could shatter his last memories of Emily, but the need to know outweighed the fear. As he reached out to people, shadows of doubt emerged. What if this is betrayal? He wondered. What if she was hiding something from me? These thoughts swirled in his mind, leaving him restless. Each time Daniel felt suspicion creeping in, he reminded himself of the words from the letter, "I want you to understand." And this simple line brought him back to calm, urging him to seek answers rather than judge. The search demanded more than calls and questions. Daniel pored over old photographs, flipped through shared journal entries, and tried to reconstruct Emily's life chronology to find clues about the person she mentioned. Every detail from the past became precious. An old postcard he had previously overlooked, a note tucked on a bookshelf that suddenly took on new meaning. The struggle with the shadow was not only external but internal. Daniel felt old fears and doubts rising, trying to stop him. He saw faces of the unknown in the shadows of his apartment, a symbol of what he feared, the possible truth, the possible loss of the last image of Emily that he had preserved. And every time fear overtook him, he paused, took a deep breath, and recalled her words, "I want you to understand." Gradually, the search began to bear fruit. A few hints led him to an old friend of Emily's, someone she had previously worked with on a joint project. Daniel nervously knocked on the door, feeling his heart quicken. Every minute of waiting felt eternal because he feared discovering something that could change his memories of Emily forever. The conversation turned out to be unexpectedly gentle. Emily's old friend, learning that Daniel was her husband, spoke sincerely, revealing facts without making him feel guilty.
He spoke of shared experiences with Emily, her fears and doubts, and important moments that Daniel had missed himself. Each word was like a ray of light illuminating the darkness of his uncertainties. But along with the light came shadows. Daniel learned of moments he had never known, people Emily had once loved, choices she had made in life without him, fears she had concealed to avoid troubling him. At first this felt like a blow, but gradually he began to understand. This was not betrayal. It was part of her life, her own path, which allowed her to be who she was alongside him. Every new fact demanded that Daniel reconsider his own past. He felt his own resentments and doubts dissolve as he gradually began to see the truth in all its complexity. Emily's letter had become a key to understanding. She had not left him to punish or shock him, but to help him understand that life is not simply black and white, but full of countless shades, and that love involves accepting those shades. The struggle with the shadow continued. Daniel could not always control the emotions that surfaced. Sorrow, anger, surprise, joy, all intertwined into a complex tapestry. And the more he learned, the deeper he felt compelled to uncover all the secrets of the past, even if it would hurt. He also realized that wrestling with the shadow was not only about Emily's past, but about confronting his own fear of letting go of the images and doubts he had carried inside for years. Every step in his search was a step toward himself. He learned to trust his instincts, to distinguish fear from genuine intuition, to accept the truth as it was, not as he wished it to be. The search led him to a pivotal moment. He finally met the person from Emily's past. Their encounter was tense, yet sincere. Daniel felt fear and curiosity warring within him. This person was not a threat, but part of Emily's story that he could now accept. They spoke at length, revealing details of the past and explaining choices Emily had made. Each word helped him see her more deeply, with all the richness of her inner world. After that meeting, Daniel felt the shadow of doubt and fear gradually receding. He realized that the struggle had been not only external, but internal. Accepting the truth, acknowledging his own mistakes, and learning to move forward. He now saw that Emily's letter was not a source of pain, but a gift that taught him to accept reality and move ahead. And although Daniel did not yet know what awaited him, he felt a strength he had never realized before. Wrestling with the shadow had taught him to see more, feel more, and accept more. He no longer lived in the shadow of his grief. He was stepping out of it, and each day revealed new perspectives, new paths for understanding himself and the world around him. The days became lighter, though not without pain. Daniel knew the journey was far from over, that many questions and moments of reflection still lay ahead. Yet he felt he could now look to the future with greater clarity and inner strength, ready to embrace life in all its shades, with all its complexity and beauty.
Chapter 5. Reconciliation with the Truth. Daniel sat in the quiet of his apartment, staring at the letter that had been before him for several days. Since meeting the person from Emily's past and seeing his search begin to bear fruit, he felt an inner change. The pain of loss remained, but it was no longer sharp. It had become a quiet, almost calm companion, accompanying him on the path to understanding. He read the letter again and again, and each time Emily's words revealed new meanings. Now he understood that her intentions had never been mysterious or insidious. She hadn't left him with pain or doubt. She had left him with a key to acceptance, to healing, to a new life. Every line was part of her love, which continued to exist even when she was no longer physically present.
Daniel realized that the letter was not an acknowledgement of past mistakes or betrayal, but a final act of care and wisdom. She knew his pain was great, and at the same time, she wanted to give him the strength to learn to live again. Her words were like a quiet voice. "I am always with you even when I am not," and this voice repeatedly gave him a sense of calm. Reconciliation with the truth was not instantaneous. It required time, patience, and courage. Daniel spent hours reflecting on every moment of their life together. He looked at photographs he had previously been unable to bear, listened to recorded voices, reread her journals. Every fragment of their story, which he had once avoided because of the pain, now became a bridge to understanding and acceptance. He understood that her hint about the person from her past was not a provocation or a warning. It was a way of showing him the depth of her life, her inner world, her complexity. He felt gratitude that she had entrusted him with a part of herself he had previously overlooked, and for the opportunity to discover new horizons of love and life. Reconciliation also meant releasing himself from guilt and doubt. Daniel realized that he had loved her sincerely, that he had done everything he could, even if he did not always understand all the nuances of her inner world. Now he could accept himself as he had been in their marriage, not perfect, but sincere. And this acceptance brought him a peace he had not felt in a long time. He began to notice changes within himself. He now viewed life with greater openness. He no longer feared experiencing pain because he understood that through pain and loss comes deeper understanding and true strength. Every memory, every line of Emily's letter became part of his new life, a life where love, memory, and acceptance coexist. He began planning a future that once seemed impossible. He decided to reconnect with friends, travel to places they had once discussed, and find joy in the small details of daily life. Every step was a step toward freedom, a step toward restoring himself after loss, a step toward reconciliation with the truth. Daniel also realized that true love does not end with death. Emily's love continued to live in his heart, in his memories, in his actions, and this connection gave him the strength to move forward, honoring her memory, not by clinging to it, but by living through it. One evening he stepped outside, feeling a gentle breeze on his face. The city lights reflected in puddles after the rain, and everything around seemed fresh, alive. Daniel felt he could smile without guilt or pain. He felt Emily's presence not as a burden, but as a quiet companion in his life. He understood that the letter had been her final gift, a gift that taught him to live again. And this gift required no words of thanks, for true gratitude revealed itself in his actions, in how he chose to live, how he chose to love, and how he chose to remember and cherish every moment. The days became brighter. Daniel no longer hid from the world, no longer feared feeling, no longer avoided memories. He was learning to live in harmony with the memory of Emily and with his own life. Now he could feel joy, laugh, plan, dream, all without guilt or doubt. Reconciliation with the truth gave him new strength. He understood that life is a series of moments woven together by love, memory, and choices, and that true wisdom lies not in rejecting pain, but in accepting it alongside joy. Daniel closed the letter, feeling an inner lightness. He knew that many days, many experiences, many memories lay ahead. But now he was ready for anything, ready to love life, accept its complexity and beauty, and preserve the memory of Emily as a source of strength and light. He stood, looked around the room at spaces that had once seemed empty, and felt that they were no longer empty. They were filled with her love, memories, and inspiration. And he realized he was ready to move forward,
keeping everything that had been real, yet not stopping, for life continues. Daniel stepped outside, inhaled the fresh air, and for the first time in many months felt true freedom. Freedom to live, freedom to remember, freedom to love and embrace the world in all its fullness. And this freedom was the most precious gift Emily had left him in her final letter.